folks, Chris Brandlin. I have another tool that I'm going to recommend that you keep at your office or your home, especially if you travel or if you sit all day. So this is called a travel release board. I actually got this from the folks over at Thrival Muscle Recovery. They're actually at Hack Your Health. They have all these tools, but this is actually a travel release board. What's good about this is it actually releases a lot of tight muscles in your body. So the number one, like the main muscles that are getting tight for a lot of people that travel or they sit for a living is your hip flexor muscles, okay? So your hip flexor muscles, just think, they flex your hips. So if I'm right here, my hips are in a flex position, like when you're sitting. So your hip flexor muscles are actually kind of two main muscles that work together. It's your psoas muscle and your iliacus muscle right inside your pelvis. So whenever you're sitting, those get tight. And when those muscles get tight, your hip flexor muscles get tight, it actually makes it a very uncomfortable kind of like, pelvic and hip pain, but it also pulls on your lower back. And as a former personal trainer, most of my clients that had a lot of lower back problems, they're usually because they had desk jobs and they're sitting all day because their hip flexors were flexed all day. So they had tight hip flexor muscles. So there's two ways you can kind of stretch it. You can stretch your hip flexors like a static stretch like this. You basically clench, you like flex your glutes and you're stretching because you're doing the opposite of flexion. So if I'm doing a stretch position right here, I'm stretching the hip flexors. I do this, sometimes people see me doing this at the airport, especially because, I have to travel across the US, more often than not, so it's like a 6-hour flight. Or you can dig in there and basically break up the tight muscles inside your hip flexor muscles. And this is where, so usually if you're digging in, you're going to be digging in like inside your rectus abdominis, inside there to break up the tight muscles, okay? So this is a very different effective made. You can use like a massage ball, but what I like about this, first of all, it's very thin. You travel it, you can keep it in your office, you can basically put it anywhere. And you can set this so you can do both hip flexor muscles at the same time, both sides. So look, I set this at level 3. I use these. You can use, they have different knobs if you want, but this is kind of mostly for your lower back, and these are not as effective. This actually digs into the hip flexor muscles. I like this a lot better. So what you do is you put it right to the outside of your lower abdominals, and it's digging inside your hip flexor muscles. You let it sink in. It should hurt, because what it's doing is basically breaking up all the the knots in your hip flexor muscles. And then if you want to progress it, you do a cobra. Like so, because if you guys know from the yoga moves, this is why I like to have strong and good hips, is because I want to be mobile. But right here, I'm progressing because I'm digging into the hip flexor muscles and I'm breaking up. So I definitely recommend, especially if you have a desk job and especially if you travel a lot. If you travel a lot, you're going to have tight hip flexors, okay? A lot of people, they're having pelvic problems, and it's kind of as you have tight hip flexors. So think about it. And if you have tight hip flexor muscles, they will inhibit your abdominals from working, your transverse abdominis, which is so important for supporting your spine. And so a lot of people, they have weak glutes, they have weak transverse abdominis, and they have very tight hip flexor muscles, and they have lower back problems. And this is definitely a good way that you can break up and release your hip flexor muscles, okay? So another tool that I recommend if you keep it in your home or your office, especially if you sit all day or if you travel. Eat meat, train hard, and let's make America great and healthy again.